Dumb Decks. Hey, what's up nerds? Hardleg Joe here, welcoming you once again to Dumb Decks, the show where I look at Yu-Gi-Oh builds that are unique and interesting, but not necessarily good. This time we're looking at Totem 5 Rekindling, a cheese OTK deck that, as far as I know, is the best use of Rekindling since it has come back to 3. Now, if you're not a Yu-Gi boomer and you don't remember Rekindling, it's a pretty simple spell card that says, special summon from your graveyard as many fire monsters as possible with 200 defense, but banish them during the end phase. Back in 2014, this thing was powerful enough to be banned, and given that it can potentially summon up to 5 monsters from the grave without any cost, I think most people expected it to remain that way for the foreseeable future. Surprisingly, though, it was let off the ban list entirely earlier this year, and proceeded to do absolutely nothing, for reasons that become obvious once you look at the available pool of fire monsters with 200 defense. There's a lot of them to be sure, but most of them suck, and not a single archetype is made completely out of 200 defense monsters. Flamevel is close. All but 4 of their monsters have 200 defense. But Flamevel are also one of the worst archetypes in the game. None of their cards benefit from going to the graveyard or from being revived from the graveyard, and there's not an easy way to put them in the graveyard. So the only use of Rekindling in that deck is a late-game Boral Sword, which is a terrible idea because it assumes you can somehow make it to late game playing Flamevel. Fire Kings, Fire Fist, Lavels, Hazy Flames, these are all better options. They're all fire decks that have a few 200 defense monsters, but not enough that you can really rely on Rekindling in the main deck. And even if you could, few of those monsters generate any advantage on their own, meaning Rekindling is a play extender at best in those decks. In the end, after looking over every Rekindling target in the game, there was only one I found that did anything special. So I built a deck around it. Totem 5 is a level 3 fire rock monster that says, if 5 monsters are special summoned at the same time, including this card, destroy as many cards as your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, inflict 500 damage for each. With this in mind, the game plan is pretty simple. Dump 5 fire monsters with 200 defense into the graveyard, including Totem 5, summon them all back with Rekindling, blow up your opponent's entire field while inflicting burn damage, and then use all the monsters you summon to either just attack for game directly, or as material for extra deck monsters that can close things out for you. It seems easy in theory, but in practice it can be a bit difficult. To start with, Rekindling is completely unsearchable, at least by any reasonable means. You want cards in the graveyard, but you don't want to randomly mill with stuff like Lightsworns, because you have no way to recover your Rekindlings if you lose them. Likewise, there's not really any generic draw power that works well in this deck. You need these 2 cards, so Desires is very risky, and you can't use Duality or Demise because you need to special summon the turn you get this. The only potential option is Extravagance, but that's kind of a double-edged sword in this deck. I've included it in the side deck because if you want to, you can run it and try desperately to draw into your win condition first, second turn, I guess. But if you fail, you're pretty much fucked. With the monsters available to you, your only real chance of surviving if you don't get your combos is to make a bunch of Synchro and Link plays, which is severely hampered if you banish a bunch of random parts from your extra deck. In the end, I decided to forego the draw power in favor of just making the deck have some backup in case the combo doesn't work. A red Resonator is probably the best playmaker the deck has, which is why we played in 3 along with Resonator Call to search it. It plus any of your level 4s can get you into Red Rising Dragon, which can combo up into your level 8 dragons, while gaining you some much needed life points in the process. You can also use it to make things like Coral Dragon or Brionic, which can help you set up the graveyard while baiting out negation, since they both discard to get rid of cards. And if you happen to get it with one of your level 3s, you can make Laval Dual Slasher, which sucks, but it's another fire monster with 200 defense that you can link into the graveyard, and then summon back with Rekindling for bonus damage. Speaking of bonus damage, that's why we play this dude. It has the second highest attack of any Rekindling target, and it can summon itself from the hand if one of your fire monsters gets destroyed, so it can block attacks sometimes. There's also True King Agnes, the Vanisher, which is the only monster we play without 200 defense. It allows you to destroy 2 cards in your hand or on your field, and if they are both fire, you can non-targetingly banish an opponent's card. This thing is a staple in any fire deck, can be used to bait out negation or to add more attack to the field, and while it can't be summoned with Rekindling, it can put 2 monsters into the grave for Rekindling, so it's fine in my book. The other important cards in here are Flamevel Lady and the Laval package. Lady lets you discard a fire monster to Foolish Burial a fire with 200 defense, which is why we can afford to play Totem 5 at 2, this thing can just dump it. As for the Laval package, it represents the fastest and cleanest way to get a bunch of fires into the graveyard. Molten Conduction Field lets you send 2 Lavals from your deck to the graveyard, and if Handmaiden is sent to the graveyard, and there's another Laval in the graveyard to keep her company, you can send a Laval to the graveyard. This effect isn't once per turn, and she can send another copy of herself, so if you get this spell, you can send all 3 Maidens and 2 other bonus Lavals from your deck to the graveyard, giving you the 5 targets you need for maximum Rekindling. Everything else in here is just the best 200 defense fires I could find. Our other Laval level 4 is there to help with synchros, and it can discard fires in your hand. This Knight helps you to deck thin by equipping a Fire Warrior from the deck when it's summoned. It can also potentially chain block if you summon it alongside Totem 5, since these will both activate at the same time. Avarta, meanwhile, can negate once in a blue moon, and Boost Warrior is a level 1 Fire Warrior tuner with 200 defense that can special summon itself if you control a tuner, meaning it synergizes with this, and this. But anyway, now that you've seen how this works in theory, let's check it out in action. As you can see, we're going up against 60 card Venamanaga Turbo, and they bricked, which is about on par with how strong this deck is. Notice how, if the opponent plays no disruption whatsoever, we can make Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend and actually get some damage in, even though we don't have our Wind Con. At this rate, we probably would have game anyway, but we happen to draw Rekindling, so we go for the big finish. Using our True King, we clear the Dark Dragon out of the extra monster zone, which gives us 2 fire monsters on the field that we can turn into Doolittle Chimera. This leaves us with 5 free zones, so we can Rekindling into Totem 5 and wipe the board. From there, we could have made a whole bunch of synchros and links and stuff, but there's really no point when we already had game. I've also got this other replay, which shows pretty much what happens if you get the optimal God Hand and everything works perfectly. We open with both Totem 5 and Rekindling, then upstart into Molten Convection Field, which allows us to mill every Laval in the deck. We also happen to open with Avarta, which negates the 1 monster effect our opponent needed to get started, allowing us to pass into our turn, make Doolittle, Rekindling into Totem, and our opponent concedes before we can summon anything. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe you could run Pot of Extravagance and just not worry about the extra deck. Because if you happen to get Totem 5, you don't actually need to build anything. Your opponent will probably just surrender once they see that you've nuked the field and you have 5 monsters. Regardless, that's the optimal situation. I played about 20-25 duels just to get 3 wins, and only 2 of those actually used Totem 5. The other one I just beat them down with Scarlight and a True King. Most of the time, though, your opponent will defeat you long before you get the combo. Or they'll just put some disruption on board that'll prevent it from going off even when all the pieces are in place. Still, if you're looking for a super casual deck to play with friends, something that gives them 5 or 6 turns to do stuff before you hit them with the game-ending combo, this could be a fun thing to try. Also, if we ever get a better 200 defense fire archetype, or more support for the existing monsters in this category, the Totem 5 Rekindling combo could perhaps be splashed into that, especially if the deck plays Flamevel Lady for that consistent graveyard setup. Either way, I hope you enjoyed hearing about this dumb little deck. Give the video a like if you want to see more dumb decks, subscribe for more goofy Yu-Gi-Oh content in general, and if you have your own ideas for dumb decks, leave them down in the comments below. I've also got a Patreon, it's pretty neat, most of the people like it, check that out. Regardless, until next time, good luck, and have fun.